Picture this. It's 1200 BCE. You're living in the height of human civilization. Massive palaces tower over thriving cities. Trade ships carry exotic goods across the Mediterranean. Bronze weapons gleam in the hands of powerful armies. The world has never been more connected, more prosperous, or advanced. Then, in just 50 years, it all disappears. Every major civilization from Greece to Egypt collapses simultaneously. Cities burn. Palaces crumble. Writing systems vanish. The Mediterranean world plunges into a dark age that lasts 400 years. What could possibly cause such total devastation? Today, we're diving into one of history's greatest mysteries, the Bronze Age collapse. The Late Bronze Age was humanity's first golden age of globalization. Imagine a world where Mycenaean Greeks traded with Egyptian pharaohs, where Hittite kings married Babylonian princesses, where copper from Cyprus was forged into weapons in distant lands. This wasn't just trade, this was a sophisticated international system that wouldn't be seen again for over a millennium. Before we explore the collapse, let's understand what was lost. The Mycenaeans controlled mainland Greece from their fortress palaces. Climate scientists have found evidence of severe drought across the eastern Mediterranean. Tree-ring data shows the worst dry spell in centuries. Rivers dried up, crops failed. Famine stalked the land. Were they displaced refugees fleeing their own collapsing homelands? Pirates taking advantage of weakened states? A confederation of maritime raiders united by desperation. They were the first civilization to master ironworking, giving them a technological edge that made them nearly unstoppable. The real mystery begins with a group the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples, and they were about to turn the Bronze Age world upside down. His victory inscriptions describe a desperate battle against foreign invaders who brought their families with them, suggesting this wasn't just raiding, but mass migration under pressure. Their linear B tablets reveal a complex bureaucracy, managing everything from chariot wheels to perfumed oils. Ramesses II built monuments that still take our breath away. They didn't fight like traditional armies. They moved fast, struck hard, and disappeared before defenders could respond. Their massive capital at Hattusa was abandoned around 1180 BCE. It's as if the entire population just left. This wasn't gradual decline. This was sudden, catastrophic collapse. This island was the Bronze Age's industrial powerhouse, the source of copper that gave the age its name. Every major city was destroyed around 1200 BCE. The sophisticated Cypriot culture disappeared, replaced by much simpler settlements. The Hittite king's last known correspondence is a desperate letter requesting grain shipments. Then the empire that had challenged Egypt simply vanished from history. Egyptian influence stretched from Nubia to the Levant. The pharaohs commanded wealth that made them the envy of the known world. People were burying their most precious possessions and never coming back for them. The sophisticated Mycenaean script, Linear B, disappeared entirely. Greece wouldn't see writing again for 400 years. All at once, the lands were removed and scattered in the fray. No land could stand before their arms. Egypt retreated from its international empire, focusing on survival rather than expansion. Its last king sent a desperate message. The enemy ships are already here. They have set fire to my cities and have done very evil things to my land. They watched their trading partners disappear one by one. Their commercial networks collapse. Their sources of raw materials vanish. These weren't primitive chieftains. They were sophisticated administrators running maritime empires. Ramesses III faced the largest Sea Peoples invasion around 1175 BCE. His temple reliefs at Medinet Habu show a massive naval and land battle. The pharaoh's inscriptions are chilling. The Philistines, for example, show clear cultural connections to the Asian world. They might have been Mycenaean Greeks, fleeing their own collapsing homeland. Modern archaeology has revealed something unexpected. The sea peoples weren't necessarily outsiders. Palace administrations broke down. Central authority disappeared. Local elites abandoned their posts. Something was actively destroying the Bronze Age world. The Egyptian accounts of coordinated sea peoples attacks suggest organized, purposeful destruction. Successful attacks create more refugees who become raiders themselves out of necessity. Technological knowledge was lost. International trade networks took centuries to rebuild. The collapse swept away the old Bronze Age palace cultures with their rigid hierarchies and centralized control. In the ashes, new forms of civilization began to grow. As cards fall, they knock down others, which knock down others, until the entire edifice collapses far beyond what the original earthquake should have caused. A democratic city-state, the concept of individual rights, rational philosophy. These innovations might not have been possible under the old palace system. Each collapse creates more pressure on surviving states until the entire system implodes. In Anatolia, the Hittite Empire rivaled Egypt itself. Their capital, Hattusa, was a marvel of Bronze Age engineering with massive walls and underground tunnels. The legendary Troy Via was destroyed around this time, possibly the historical basis for Homer's Trojan War. But this wasn't a 10-year siege by Greek heroes. This was part of a Mediterranean-wide catastrophe. Supply chain disruptions, remember the Suez Canal blockage, or semiconductor shortages, show how quickly our interconnected world can face crisis. Pylos burned so hot that the clay tablets in its archives were accidentally fired, preserving them for us to read today. We're talking about the complete collapse of civilization across an entire region. Writing disappeared. Trade networks shattered. Population levels plummeted. Technological knowledge was lost. Complexity brings benefits, but it also creates vulnerabilities. The more interconnected a system becomes, the more catastrophic its potential failure. From the ashes of the Bronze Age came innovations that defined the next millennium of human progress. These tablets reveal a civilization in panic, frantic preparations for siege, desperate attempts to organize defenses, and then silence. We may never know exactly who the sea peoples were, or precisely what triggered the cascading failures that brought down civilization across the eastern Mediterranean. One by one, every major Bronze Age power collapsed in rapid succession. The question isn't whether we face disruptions. It's how we adapt when they come. Let me know in the comments below. Financial systems linked economies worldwide. A disruption in one part of the world can cascade globally in ours. Egypt was in its new kingdom glory days. Human societies have a remarkable ability to adapt, innovate, and rebuild. The dark age that followed the Bronze Age collapse wasn't the end of civilization. It was a painful transition to something new and potentially better. Connecting it all was an intricate web of trade routes. Tin from Afghanistan, copper from Cyprus, amber from the Baltic, silver from Spain, all flowing through a network of merchants, diplomats, and adventurers who had turned the Mediterranean into humanity's first global highway. But here's the thing about complex systems. The more interconnected they become, the more vulnerable they are to cascading failures. The first cracks appeared around 1250 BCE. But climate change was just the opening act. Who were the sea peoples? That's the million-dollar question. Egyptian records mention them, but their origins remain one of archaeology's greatest puzzles. What we know is terrifying. They appeared suddenly, seemingly from nowhere, with a new kind of warfare that Bronze Age armies couldn't handle. The Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah faced the first major sea peoples invasion around 1208 BCE, but Egypt's victory was temporary. The sea peoples were just getting started. What happened next reads like a disaster movie. The Mycenaeans went first. Around 1200 BCE, their palace centers were systematically destroyed. Archaeologists have found evidence of hasty burials and hidden treasure hoards throughout Greece. the Hittites were next. What's particularly eerie is that many Hittite cities show signs of deliberate destruction, but others were simply abandoned. Cyprus burned. The Levanton coast was devastated. Ugarit, a cosmopolitan trading hub, was completely destroyed. That's the last we hear from Ugarit. The city was so thoroughly destroyed, it was never rebuilt. Even distant Troy didn't escape. The scale of destruction is mind-boggling. We're not talking about one empire falling and being replaced by another. It was as if someone had pressed a reset button on human progress. But not everyone perished in the chaos. Some civilizations survived, and their accounts give us clues about what was happening. Egypt endured, but barely. The foreign countries made a conspiracy in their islands. Egypt won, but the victory was Pyrrhic. The new kingdom never fully recovered. Assyria survived in northern Mesopotamia, but as a shadow of its former self. Babylon endured, but became increasingly isolated as the international system collapsed around them. The survivors tell us something crucial. This wasn't a natural disaster or climate catastrophe alone. But who were these destroyers? And why were they so effective? Here's where the Bronze Age collapse becomes truly mysterious. Recent studies suggest that many of the Sea Peoples groups mentioned in Egyptian texts might have been displaced Bronze Age populations, refugees from the very civilizations that were collapsing. This creates a terrifying feedback loop. Climate stress weakens states,